welcome to the webinar, WannaCry and Other Ransomware, Strategies and Approach for Preventing and Removing It. We're going to get started shortly. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to get online and get registered. But thank you for your patience. Hi, welcome everyone to the webinar, WannaCry and Other Ransomware, Strategies and Approach for Preventing and Removing It. We're going to get started today, just going through some housekeeping. So if you go to the next slide. We're just going to go through some housekeeping, introduce the presenters, share a little bit about Conexxus, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end of the presentation. Next slide. So the webinar is now being recorded, and it will be made available in approximately 30 days, and it will be posted to the YouTube channel, and the slide deck will be provided if you complete a short survey that will be sent out after the webinar. It is on mute, so if you have any questions, there's a panel on the right side of your screen where you can enter in your questions, and we'll take questions throughout the presentation and also at the end. But please, no vendor-specific questions. If you have any further questions, you can email info@conexxus.org. I'm Russell. I'll be your moderator for the webinar today. The presenter is George Saunier, the Senior Solutions Architect at Omega ATC, who has over 36 years of experience in remote systems management and security software development, primarily focused on retail, distribution, and field sales. Next slide. A little about Conexxus. We are an independent, non-profit, member-driven technology organization setting standards in data exchange, security, and mobile commerce. We provide vision to identify emerging technology and trends, and we also advocate for our industry believing technology is policy. Next slide. Please join us for our next free webinar on July 27th on third-party risk management, how to identify and manage data security risks from your vendors. And also our webinar in August. Next slide. Join Conexxus in Chicago for the NACS show, which will be on October 17th through the 20th, 2017. Visit naxshow.com/technology edge for more information. Next slide. So today's webinar is on WannaCry and Other Ransomware, Strategies and Approach for Preventing and Removing It. And now I'd like to turn it over to George.
Okay, thanks very much for that introduction, Allie. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate being able to come to here today and speak to you all about ransomware, a very serious subject. I've got to report back that some individuals may be seeing okay, I guess we've got that straightened out now. So we are seeing a full slide presentation now and not the presenter mode. So I guess I just got verification of that, so there you go. Okay, so let's talk about ransomware. Ransomware attacks are everywhere. On February 2016, Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center ended up paying $17,000 to unlock all their systems that were down for 10 days, totally taking their, completely taking their hospital operation out. On Black Friday, November 25th, the San Francisco train operations were down for 2 days as they restored from backups in order to avoid paying a $73,000 ransom that was demanded by the ransomware that took over their systems. Even small businesses are affected. The Sport Levain family NASCAR race team, ended up paying a $500 ransom to get the race car control files back so that they could race that day. Dave Winston, their crew chief, ended up having to go quickly to an ATM in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina, in order to get Bitcoin from a Bitcoin ATM to pay the ransom. Even police departments themselves are affected. $4,000 in Bitcoin was demanded by ransomware, and the FBI, provided input to that police department, and they ended up losing 8 years of video evidence and case files to avoid paying the ransom. And of course, dear to our heart, 2 petro operators in the U.S. also recently suffered ransomware attacks. They don't want their names disclosed, but they did elect to pay the fines in order to get their data back. So ransomware attacks are going ballistic. When we look at an IBM study on ransomware recently, how consumers and businesses value their data, it was determined that emails with ransomware payloads are up 6,000% in 2016 over 2015, and that all spam, or 40% of spam email contains ransomware payloads, meaning the code that will attack a system if you open the attachment for that email. 70% of ransomware victims paid their ransom, and when breaking down the amount paid, 50% paid greater than $10,000, 20% paid over $40,000 in ransom to ransomware attackers to unlock their systems. Even consumers, will pay over $100. At least close to half of consumers will pay over $100 just to get pictures of grandma, their last vacations, and so forth back from ransomware attackers. So, as I said before, there's been a lot of attacks on businesses. A Datto study, who provides backup services, basically surveyed 1,100 of their service provider professionals who provide service to companies, not individuals, and said that 92% of their clients had suffered ransomware attacks, and that 40% of those had suffered greater than 6 attacks in total. And even 31% had multiple ransomware incidents, meaning pop-up of a demand message on computers in a single day. And since only 1 in 4 incidents are reported, the problem may even be much more significant than realized and reported in the news. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what is ransomware, the families of ransomware and the expansion in those families as of late. What exactly does it look like on your systems? What does it do exactly to your systems, and how you can help identify which ransomware has attacked you. Then we're going to talk about how to defend against ransomware, what layers of defense you need to stop ransomware attacks on your systems in the first place, whether to pay or not to pay, and some of the deciding criteria as far as what you'll need to consider in making that decision, what's coming next, and then also some reference to reporting ransomware to authorities so that it can be better tracked and better fought. So ransomware is basically simply malware that blocks access to a victim's data. It either threatens to expose it publicly until ransom is paid, locks your system, crypts the data, and so forth, so that you don't have access to the data. Some ransomware moves data to attacker servers, meaning it steals potential valued data from your systems, and it's delivered primarily via email attachments or malicious websites that have either been preloaded with attractive emails that you may open because it has something to do with your job or your something you may be interested in, or you may be redirected to a malicious website where that ransomware can be downloaded onto your system when you browse to it. The important thing to realize about ransomware is it can migrate between systems within an organization across the network when they are on a common subnet, and there are less security mechanisms in place between those systems. A recent expansion of ransomware families found by a couple of different companies here, OpenDNS and F-Secure, have been well documented, and I wanted to show you a graph to show the accelerating expansion of ransomware families, and we'll take a look at a couple of those. Ransomware started in 1989 with a diskette-based PC cyborg attack. It was really not across an internet attack vector, but it was provided as diskettes to individuals who attended an AIDS conference back in 1989. And then until around 2010, little or no changes occurred with ransomware, other than a few variants being created. But starting around 2010, there was a great increase in the number of families. So there was many more open source projects and other developments going on that allowed this to occur. If we take a look at a more detailed graph, and I'm going to try the zoom feature here, we can kind of see that starting around 2010, the number of families just went exponential. And I know it may be difficult to read some of this, but as you can see, that each month there were a dozen or so new ransomware families created. So one of the things that enabled this expansion of ransomware and ransomware attacks is the dark web. The dark web is where these guys hang out. They do their development and they share ideas back and forth and so forth. And they develop two things that are really necessary for people with very little technical expertise in the criminal world to use to essentially leverage ransomware to ransom money. First of all, is a simple exploit kit. It basically provides a way to take a standard email or attractive email that you've authored and attach a ransomware payload to it, and creates a new attachment that can then has that embedded code in it that will run when you download that attachment, whether it be a Word file, an Excel spreadsheet, or something that someone may be interested in, and unknowingly starts up a ransomware attack on their own system. The other thing that's come about more recently is ransomware as a service. It's actually a complete service, just like you would buy anything else today, as a service implementation. It includes the exploit kits, the bot delivery, meaning the the email servers that are used to generate massive emails, distribution of the exploit itself. It includes technical folks to help you with installation and troubleshooting, 24/7 support, purchasing shopping carts so it's easy to purchase it, maintenance updates, consulting, and ransomware payment handling. So you get the whole package all together as a criminal to essentially effect attacks against the public or companies. There's even revenue sharing arrangements with attackers to reduce the amount of capital that they might need in order to start a service in this business. So we've seen how ransomware is expanding and how easy it is to get the tools. So now we're going to take a look at what does it look like exactly when you are attacked, and what does it do to your systems. If we're going to start off with some screenshots that have been provided by various researchers in the ransomware world out on the clear web, and some posts and so forth that have been made by individuals who were nice enough to share some of the screenshots of ransomware attacks that are somewhat hard to create. So the ones we're going to take a look at are Locky, Cerber, Jigsaw, Cryptex, Shade, and then of course in the news much more recently in May, WannaCry, and then this last week, NotPay. These are all highly used ransomware families that have some unique characteristics that I'm going to highlight in the next several slides in order to possibly help you identify what you've been attacked with, because that will be a major decision into whether you pay or not pay the ransom. It will be helpful to know, so you know what the extent of damage could be on the system and so forth. And then like I said, we'll also treat a little more heavily WannaCry and NotPay as their current. So back in 2016, the most active ransomware was Locky. It was delivered via email via the Nicurs botnet. That is essentially one of the largest botnets of spam servers out there. a network of spam servers out there. It basically, once that email has been downloaded and executes on your system, and we'll talk about some more of that in a little bit, it'll encrypt and rename files to the extensions that you see here in the slide, and encrypts local files and network shares, meaning it reaches over and it takes hold of network shares that system may have access to, and also encrypts and renames the files on those shares. In order to circumvent recovery, it does delete volume shadow copies, which means you can't use Windows normal mechanisms to revert to previous versions to help with recovery. There are currently no decryption tools, meaning tools that can take encrypted files and unencrypt them using keys and other techniques that researchers have gleaned from attacks and from the decryption keys that have been provided by ransomware attackers. But you should keep checking, because if you do get lucky, there may be, at the time you are attacked, if you're attacked, there may be a decryption tool available. Some of the newer versions of Locky, meaning the spin-offs of Locky in its original state that other developers on the dark web have modified, basically perform offline encryption, meaning they move the files from your system to an offline facility to encrypt them and bring them back or retain them there, so that it's less detectable by malware, anti-malware software. It's also been observed recognizing and avoiding sandboxing, meaning that it's noted. I guess the developers have noted the approach used by newer anti-malware, and they can recognize its activity and actually avoid the sandboxing process that anti-malware does to prevent detection of Locky. So you really have to restore from isolated backups, or you need to pay the ransom in order to undo Locky. Locky looks like this. It's very detailed about the encryption mechanisms that it uses. It identifies, what that encryption is. It gives you a wallpaper, effectively, that comes up. It takes over your wallpaper on your system and displays these messages that indicate how to pay the ransom, where you need to go to get the decrypt program to decrypt your files as part of that, and it even includes Torta web servers. These are servers that connect you into the dark web without actually installing a dark web browser router combination. So it makes it simple if that's possible, and someone hasn't taken down those servers. They list four different examples of here. You can use those along with the stuff that would be normally not grayed out here to just place in a normal browser and go and get your decrypt program and pay your ransom and so forth. It does provide a personal identification ID, so they know what they need to send you, because you'll have a unique key for your system as it was encrypted. How convenient, right? Okay, so the next one I'm talking about is server. It was new in 2016, and the interesting thing about this ransomware and something unique about it that you might detect if you are attacked is that it does speak through the speakers on your system or your headset using DB script. So you may hear it talking to you after it attacks. It is one of those ransomwares that uses your ransomware as a service. In other words, it's being delivered by people who basically don't know much technical detail in general. They're just using ransomware as a service being hosted by servers on the dark web to deploy it. We know for a fact that they share 40% of revenues with the authors, and that early versions could be identified by your files taking on a .server extension, but the new variants use random extensions. So if you see .server, you probably have that or a related one, but the talking head potentially the .server extension may be a key, and sometimes it will require some assistance by an expert to try to identify this if you are interested in attempting to decrypt. You might also note that your databases might appear to be corrupted, because it does close those or stop the database operations on the system to encrypt them, which is somewhat unique to server itself. And if you have .server files, like I said, you can probably decrypt it using a decryption tool, but not for the newer variants. Server looks like this. It even includes a link on the ransom page to go ahead and decrypt one file for free, so you can just be sure that if you pay the Bitcoin that's being demanded here, and these are older messages, obviously, with Bitcoin's new value recently, you can try it and make sure that the decryption process will work, as a surety mechanism before you pay the Bitcoin. So here's a fast-moving one. This is called Jigsaw, and it uses extensions typically of Pay Ransom, BTC, Bay BTCS, and a few others. It counts down 1 hour at a time. We're going to see the screens in just a minute, and you can see the threat that poses. It starts deleting files in 1 hour and increases the number significantly over the next few hours, deleting 100, then 1,000. If you reboot it, it deletes 1,000 files upon startup. And so you really have to have Bitcoin ready. If you're going to pay the ransom for this one, you probably won't have time to get Bitcoin on hand. So that is as a surety mechanism to be sure you could pay ransom in Bitcoin. It may make sense to have some on hand. So here's what this one looks like. It comes across as this strange character. I believe this is from a movie of some type. I don't remember the name of it. And then it starts typing across the screen, and the 1 hour timer starts, as you can see here. It tells you how many files will be deleted at the time of that expiration, and then begins deleting files each time, starting another hour timer, and more files that would be deleted. It typically has been shown a much smaller ransom, probably because of the speed that they're trying to operate at, and does include, of course, you need, the Bitcoin address you'll need to make the payment if you would like to do that. But you don't want to confuse this with some copycats. This is some ransomware that has the same structure as Jigsaw, but it's not Jigsaw. It's been named Stutterware by researchers as of June 4th. And very recently popped up. It doesn't really delete any of the files. So if you see something like this and you're suspicious that you're not seeing any evidence of any corruption on your system, no encrypted files, or no damage to assets you normally have on your system, then you want to be careful and not pay a ransom. This one's been very successful as of late. The next is Cryptex. Cryptex is a whole family really of ransomwares. It's one of the most successful ransomwares there were in 2015, but it's still available. It came from an earlier family called TeslaCrypt, and it does still use the .crypt extension like TeslaCrypt did. It's from the same developers. They use the very popular in ransomware exploit kits, meaning kits to deploy it to people's systems, Angler, Neutrino, but both of those have gone belly up, and they don't exist anymore. So we're not really sure, or researchers that I have gotten information from are not really sure what exploit kit's being used, but it does still exist and is still attacking systems. One of the things it does do, it steals credentials in addition to encrypting, which is interesting because that's a lot like what we've seen with the NotPaya ransomware that just started, becoming known in the last week or so. There are some decryptor tools that have been developed. You can find one here on this link. I'm also going to be providing some links further in this presentation that will allow you to go and get decryption tools and removal tools and so forth. So I'll just hold on and we'll get you that slide, so you'll have that in the deck. They've written around, some of the developers have written around some of the defenses that have been done, so it is a continuing effort. It is a continual development, and it does seem to spawn more and more families quite often. So again, specific versions, determining specific versions or proper tools for decryption or removal is something you may need to get help with if you find your .crypt extensions in your system. Very kind of professional looking ransom page. Again, explaining to you very clearly what happened to your files, how nice of them, right? What encryption it used, what your personal ID is, then again the Tor to, the Tor to web links, to the dark web links, and so forth are provided there for you to go and obtain the decryption that you'll need, and the tools and key and so forth that you'll need to decrypt your files. If all else fails, they actually do give you instructions on how to install the Tor browser and take you through that. So even reminding you to copy your personal ID and instructions so that in Notepad, so you don't lose them inadvertently if you get off this page and can't get it back. So, Shade ransomware has some extra stages in it that not only encrypt, but they scan, they install remote access tools. So now the ransomware attackers are interactively getting access to your system to look for banking activity and other type of secure content, and then use your system with those credentials to access your accounts and other sensitive sites to do things with it. To essentially extort money in that way, or to transfer money to their accounts, etc. So this is a really, really scary ransomware. Again, because of the remote access and so forth, it is very threatening. You might be able to find some decryption tools for files that are actually encrypted as the final phase of Shade on the nomoreransom.org site. Another good site to keep up with if you're involved in security and IT. It's a great site to reference for information about ransomware. You might note that it uses the XTBL and YTBL extensions, and be a good sign that you have been attacked by Shade. And basically one of the aspects of Shade, which is kind of interesting, that they developed such a strong ransomware, is that it does leave the volume copies intact. So you may be able to use those shadow volume copies to restore files if you check on that. It looks like this. Not much interesting here. It basically says, we didn't bother to read my screen frame and everything. We just put a readme.txt file out there that you can easily find. So let's get to WannaCry. As we've all read about and saw last month, middle of May, it started spreading throughout the internet mid-month of May. As well documented and reported even by the general, the Channel 5 News in your local town, is that it used Microsoft critical patch MS17-010, which blocks server message block access to computers. That was released back in March. And so, if you're not keeping up with patches on those operating systems, you could have been attacked. It did infect over 200,000 computers in over 150 countries. There were 20 different languages that was seen by May 14th. But the attackers only made $100,000 because the process of restoring people's data and the process of requesting that and paying the Bitcoin was broken. And so they really didn't make a lot of money. And of course, it was shut down fairly quickly by the news media, helping people understand that patch would stop it, and that some removal tools and some decryption tools were developed and so forth. So it really shut them down pretty quickly. In this case, I believe the media really helped us get that stopped. Some more details, and again, a lot of people, you may know this, so I'll go through this fairly quickly. It used an NSA tool that was developed for government purposes called Eternal Blue, and it exploited the SMB protocol, which is what the critical patch was for. It was stolen by Russians named shadow brokers that stole it in April, and eventually, as I said, it was shut down by several different organized efforts. But one was a researcher whose name on the internet is Malware Tech, who discovered a kill switch based on a URL, registered that domain, and then, of course, all attacks that could reach that domain stopped doing damage. There have been some new variants that have popped up with different kill switches, but those are still, the number of attacks is minute compared to WannaCry that spread, across the world. So as I said, their ability to decrypt files was flawed, and so not very many people, or almost nobody, got their files decrypted by the attackers. And there is a decryption tool available if you have encrypted files you're still trying to unencrypt or decrypt. It looks like this, and the interesting thing about WannaCry is that it was thought to have been from Korea, but some linguistic analysis recently of that ransom message showed that it is accurate in the Chinese languages, or both simplified and traditional Chinese, and is accurate enough in content and tone that they really feel that the author was Chinese. Additionally, the English version that we see here is very well written, and it really kind of dispels the idea of being Korean in origin. In fact, when you translate the English version to the other languages it was seen in, it translates pretty close to 95% or better to those other languages. So it was thought that the person that authored it or the group that authored it were fluent in both Chinese and English. And this was found by some Flashpoint researchers, John Cabrera and John Costello. So probably not Korean, probably Chinese. There are some imitators, though, in Chinese that basically show a WannaDecryptor 3.0, which doesn't actually exist for WannaCry. It is 2.0. And this spinoff basically, again, is scareware, meaning it doesn't really do anything. It just attempts to to obtain Bitcoin by scaring you that it's going to do some damage. So, ransomware, WannaCry ransomware, specifically in Windows 10, is not an issue. It's been verified by Microsoft here, by Robert Lefferts, working within Microsoft, that is not vulnerable, that no customers were affected, according to Microsoft, because Windows 10 doesn't allow the WannaCry self-spreading worm that leveraged server message block, the file serving capability of Windows, that nobody got infected. But in fact, some have reported getting infected, but they typically launched WannaCry by hand. There's several YouTube videos out there on the internet. If you search for WannaCry ransomware on YouTube, you'll find some very good explanations of the process. And they actually launched the WannaCry attack exploit on several different systems with different configurations if you're interested to see what gets attacked and what doesn't. I'll also provide you with a link for the removal tool if you have WannaCry. This is the Microsoft removal tool for that, and then you'll see the decryption tool slide for the complete list. That's also shown there. So this week, a new ransomware variant appeared, and it's not the PETYA, P-E-T-Y-A, that had appeared many months ago. It's in fact not PETYA, and it's new this week. It is different. It did borrow some of the exploit code, but it does do some similar things as PETYA, but it is far different and much more advanced. Like the original PETYA, it encrypts a master file table of your system, so it locks out not only files but your entire system. It is really designed to do damage versus make money. There's really no way to pay the ransom. Not pay as of right now, and what's being reported in the last day or so, there is really no way to pay your ransom. So it's going to likely require full system reinstallation because of the locked master file table. One of the things that's not allowing the payment of the ransom is Posteo, who was the email server, basically closed the email account that was used. It was an email-based ransom payment initiation, and they closed their account, so there's no way for the email to get to the attackers, so no way to pay. It does steal credentials first, then it begins to spread, and it spreads over not only what WannaCry used, meaning Internal Blue and Eternal Romance and the SMB, capabilities that WannaCry used, but also leverages PSExec and WMIC. PSExec means a remote execution capability that Windows has to allow one computer to run processes on another, and with credentials that it's already stolen and using from the computer that attacked initially. And it's also using WMIC, which is Windows Management Interface Command Line, which is essentially a utility that lets you run commands on an adjoining system on a network. Again, needing credentials that it has stolen from the system it's initially attacked. What happens when you get attacked by not PETYA is that it shuts your system down after about 10 minutes to an hour. It restarts your system and appears to be running a check disk, a Microsoft utility that repairs lost sectors on your drive. We don't see it as much today in the more modern Windows operating systems, but it used to be something you'd see all the time years ago. So people are comfortable with seeing that run. Unfortunately, that's when it's doing its damage, and it's too late once it starts. Immediately after that, the system will be locked, and Basically, there is a kill switch for this to prevent damage. And I'll talk about that just for a second because it is so new. Right now, as best as we understand it, a lot of antivirus and anti-malware will stop the spread of NotPaya. If it gets on your system and you place a file named PERFC on the Windows folder of the C drive, okay, with any contents, this is some contents written inside of it, doesn't really matter, that file's existence will stop the damage of NotPaya. So if you haven't read this already, you don't know about it, and you're not positive about your anti-malware and antivirus capabilities, I would recommend that you place that file on your Windows folder. Here's what it looks like when it attacks. You'll see this first, then upon pressing any key, you'll see a ransom demand, but it's really not going to allow you to ever pay the ransom because of the shutdown servers and the email-based approach that they use. So where are we so far? We've talked about what it looks like, what it does to your system, and so forth. But now we really should talk about how to defend against it in the first place. So let's talk about some of the tools that you need to defend against it. As we see in the movies, you need to think like a ransomware attacker to fight ransomware. And as you know, specifically like in the Mr. Robot series and other movies and so forth, all attackers wear full jacket hoodies. They're bulky and hot in southern climates or in the summertime, but you have to defend against ransomware attacks all the time. So you don't want to wear a heavy hoodie. So what are you going to do about that? You're going to use a SO hoodie. So you're going to make sure that Srinivas and IT has a SO hoodie. You don't want to weigh them down with full pullover hoodies. You're going to get a lighter, more agile version seen here. So this is obviously one of the most important tools to fight ransomware. And so you can get that on Groupon, as you can see here. And it's kind of like those old fake turtlenecks we used to wear, for the people that are older on the presentation, where they weren't full shirts, just the turtleneck part. Okay, I'm just kidding. But yeah, check it. There's actually a thing called a SO hoodie if you're interested. So really, how to defend against ransomware. So, when you look at ransomware and you study it out there and you study what researchers have found about it, you'll find that most, companies, most researchers or companies that build tools to fight ransomware agree that it takes a layered approach. Okay, and you need to understand that layers or the attack stages of ransomware and what stages it takes on as it progresses to understand what defenses are required at each stage of the attack. So you'll see here these are common stages. If you look a lot about the opinions that researchers have out there and that others have researched about attacks and debugging code, breaking down the code that's being used for exploits, being used for the actual spreading and uploading and decryption process, you'll see there that all of that research tends to gravitate towards about 5 different stages. So I've kind of summarized that here in a graph from all the things that I've read and studied, and for you, and I'll kind of go through those quickly so you can kind of see what tools are required to fight it off. In general, first of all, the first stage is delivery, where it moves from outside out on the internet onto systems within your network or in your organization. And then it sits dormantly for either a very small period of time, just a few seconds, to even days, waiting for an opportune time to attack, and laying dormant, not really doing anything yet. Finally, it begins to wake up, it begins to run, and it looks for sensitive information with your organization. It uploads that to the attacker's servers if it has access to those, and begins spreading itself from system to system with your organization. Following that, of course, the state that we all see typically with ransomware is that it begins to encrypt your files, both on your own system, your file shares, and so forth. Lastly, demanding, in the part that's very evident, is the demand for a ransom, either through wallpaper, pop-ups, or even just a README file on your system to tell you how to pay the ransom. So it's again, important to understand when the damage actually occurs, so you know at what stage you may or may not want to take actions. So during the delivery stage and before it starts to execute, there really is no damage. It's still just dormant. Until it begins to actually steal the data and upload it to the attacker servers or the spread, there's not much that can happen. So based on that, let's take a look at the damage that actually occurs when it does get to that third, fourth, and fifth stage. First of all, for a C-store operator, headquarters damage is significant. Clearly, it's easy to understand the ransom payment cost that's involved. That could be, whatever, they're demanding 10K, 20K, etc., depending on the value that the attackers have associated with your organization and what they want to charge. But it's easy to understand the amount is right there on the screen. You typically, if you played on one, it's the same ransomware attack. It will decrypt all your systems. So it's fairly easy to understand what that attack cost or removal cost would be in terms of just paying the ransom. But way beyond that, there's employee loss productivity because the computers are not usable and not the files aren't there. You're basically losing the productivity of the employees until that gets taken care of. There's cost to recreate lost information if you can't pay the ransom or you refuse to pay it. There's the cost of restoring operations, store inventory, sales data, etc., that has to be restored, to get your company back underway again. Of course, your customers are going to, really not be happy if you lose their private information that you have in that you have stored in your loyalty program files or databases, and even potential legal action can occur if your employees' personal data is leaked and they suffer, a stolen identity or something worse, breaking into their home, whatever, that type of information is available. So, that potentially legal action could be taken against the company for losing, PII for employees. There's certainly a vendor relationship impact for any of the files that you might have, such as pending orders, payables, agreements with vendors, etc., that may that are effectively gone now, and you have to recreate them to get the vendor relationship started back up. And of course, if the attack extends, say, with shade up to C-level executive systems or takes place on C-level executive systems, there may be internal corporate plans, spreadsheets, other things like that can be leaked, and the attackers could see value to competitors and then again even extort more money based on that. So that's headquarters, and that's pretty serious damage that you need to think through as you start to prepare your defense against ransomware and be sure that you're going to be able to fend off those attacks. Beyond just the headquarters, though, there's even retail store damage that can take place. Clearly, it's not as likely that ransomware is going to get originally into your store because of the lockdown systems and so forth that you use there. But unfortunately, there's, if you have VPNs set up between your headquarters and your store systems, it provides file access, or it provides access to digital signage systems and things of that nature. There's a possibility that the ransomware can migrate through the VPN tunnels that you have to your store systems from headquarters. So if your headquarters system is attacked, shut the VPNs down right away, because the last thing you want is for it to get to all your stores and take all your stores down almost simultaneously. I can't even fathom the hit that you take from a revenue standpoint for all stores being down. And of course, then you've got customers in their local communities and wondering if all your stores have closed because of retail's tendency to close quickly. They'll just think your stores close, you shut down. So you don't want that to happen. In the monumental restoration effort that would be required for your IT team to try to get physically to all your stores, say if you have 300 stores, it's going to be very difficult to try to rescue in a short time frame. It could really take days or weeks. Okay, so we understand the damage, and it's a very ugly thing, but we really need to kind of understand how to fend this off so it doesn't get into the organization in the first place. And of course, that starts with the delivery phase. How do we keep it out of the organization? So let's take a quick look, for how it gets into the organization. And there's numerous reports. Verizon creates a data breach and investigation report, which I highly recommend. It's published every year. The one for 2017 is out now, and it tells us from research that Verizon has done on operating networks that they host or support, that the infections typically come from email or malicious web servers. These emails can convince users to open infected attachments, or there can be redirects, links in the email that essentially send you off to an infected web server where malware lives that will install, exploit kit lives, it'll install the ransomware and attack your system. And occasionally, even in the C-store environment, sometimes files are shared on jump drives and so forth, and you can get it that way, but it's very unlikely. In fact, if we look at that Verizon report, we see that of 50 million on-the-wire detection samples that were run by Verizon, that over 99% of malware, including ransomware, is delivered using email or via web browsing. So it's not the other mechanisms that you really have to worry about. It is indeed the email and the web browsing. So, that's going to be ripe for a headquarters operation, and then potentially for your stores if it spreads. And again, the source for this, for reference here on the slide, is the 2017 Data Breach Investigations Report. Check it out. So, why is ransomware so stealth? Why is it hard to detect? I mean, don't we have tools and so forth? Well, yeah, there's tools out there, but if you're just using signature-based antivirus, 5-10 years ago, it really doesn't fully detect it. It may detect it while it's coming down or while it's sitting dormant on your system. If it has a signature for it, but there's 0-day, there's recently created ransomware that it may not detect. And so a pre-execution based defense strategy is not really reliable. You have to watch for actions that are slow and persistent, and all newer ransomware basically avoids detection through operating slowly and making multiple attempts and working across your systems in a way that specifically been designed to avoid many of the antivirus and anti-malware tools that are out there. So what you've got to have tools that look for the behavior of the program and not just a signature, some pattern or piece of the file that it can rely on to try to identify it. In fact, because of all the mutations of ransomware and all the changes that are being made continuously, including self-modifying ransomware, it actually requires machine learning and fuzzy logic, meaning not exactly the same, but real close. I've seen this operation before, and consequently, I'm going to stop and shut this down, or at least sandbox it and determine if it's indeed damaging ransomware. Ransomware today is stealth because it injects code into existing files that are assumed to be okay. Windows DLLs, other executables for known applications, and so forth. And then as it does that, it moves from file to file, removing that code from the previous file that it had infected. So to avoid detection, it moves around from file to file, covering its tracks. Some of the layers of defense that you're going to need for this specific stage, meaning the delivery stage of ransomware, includes a firewall with advanced threat protection or universal threat management, tools that again are on the wire. They're watching the traffic in and out of the organization and looking for specific signatures, certain communications activity that ransomware takes. A centralized email filtering appliance, or a layer on top of your email server technology, whatever it might be, can also determine sometimes when attachments that are coming in via email are ransomware. To lock things up even further, clearly you want to keep track of your logs and to monitor those logs with a SIM tool or security information and event management capability, which has been talked about on previous Conexxus webinars. A relatively new aspect of blocking attacks at the delivery stage is security awareness training. This, you think this would be a no-brainer for your employees, but there's new aspects to how this operates and operates efficiently that we're going to take a quick look at that can help tremendously with avoiding the delivery of ransomware in the organization. I'll go real quickly on these. Patching, we all know what patching is. Just got to keep up with it. It's a have to. for browsers and operating systems. And of course, antivirus does today look at files and examines those based on signatures, and that's still a helpful thing. It's still a significant portion of ransomware can be detected with that. So don't get rid of it. You just need the others to help out. So let's talk about that user security awareness training. Basically, security awareness training are essentially tools that you use to train your employees to avoid the phishing emails, the emails that are directed to them, that are attractive, that they want to open, and essentially execute that attachment that you don't want them to execute. So they include today, modern awareness training includes tools to assess individual employees, okay? So it actually goes and sends phishing emails. They create phishing emails. They look to see which ones are opened by which employees, and from that information then targeted training is delivered to the organization based on the assessments and analyses that were done at an employee level. So we don't bother employees who are good at avoiding phishing, but we teach those who have been known to open phishing emails during the testing how to detect it and what to do and so forth. And this includes not only phishing attempts for emails, but also proper password management, how to best use Wi-Fi and avoid issues with that, USB drives, etc. So the next stage after delivery, of course, is when the files are laying there dormant. And as we said before, antivirus and anti-malware signature-based can help with detection. That scheduled scanning that they do in the evenings typically can help identify if the ransomware does sit dormant, waiting for an attack period or a synchronization with, for other systems, so it's a simultaneous synchronized attack, maybe to be able to detect it at that time and block it. Of course, any configuration change management you're doing in place could also identify files that are unexpected or not supposed to be there or have changed in some way. So those are good tools at the not executed stage to help fend off ransomware. During spreading and uploading, we do need to understand a little bit about how this works, and so we'll take a look at a slide here that shows that a system initially infected with ransomware can use, as we've talked about in WannaCry and NotPaya, can use remote procedure calls or other low-level net bias calls in the networks to spread to other systems. If you have not scanned for those vulnerabilities or you haven't remediated those vulnerabilities, it will use that. Of course, any file servers that it has access to with the account the user is using, or a system account or network system account that can be utilized, can get to file shares and encrypt those files in addition, so essentially spreading the effect out to other file servers. And something that a lot of people don't realize today is things like Dropbox and other cloud-based server arrangements or shared server arrangements. Not that Dropbox is bad, but any of them that allow direct file access through, for instance, synchronized copies of Dropbox files in the folders on a system, if they can be reached by the ransomware with the accounts that are available to it, they basically can not only encrypt the files for Dropbox, meaning encrypting it for everybody because it's going to synchronize that encrypted file now back out to the Dropbox, it's also going to inject its exploit code or its transfer code into the files, and then when the next user opens that on their system, they'll be infected. So think about Dropbox. Be sure that you're scanning Dropbox for for ransomware. It's not just something in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about it. It can contain attacks, and you don't want it spreading that way. So a little bit, just kind of speed things up here just a little bit. The defense layers that are available to you for the spreading stage, including again anti-malware that has behavior analysis, as we mentioned before. That it includes, whitelisting of applications, meaning, things that you're using today already to prevent applications that are not supposed to run from running. Network segmentation, where you've divided your network up so that, ransomware can't spread between segments of computers. Data loss prevention tools that look to see if data is exiting the organization. So when the ransomware attacker is stealing data from the organization with ransomware, it will see evidence of the data that it is stealing and stop it because of the nature of the data itself. internal vulnerability scanning, which we'll touch on in just a second, and firewall, universal threat management, and command and control blocking, C2 blocking, that prevents the ransomware from talking to its command and control server. So as regarding internal vulnerability scanning, I can't stress enough that, although we know it's required for PCI and it protects your CDE, and you look for high-risk vulnerabilities, that if you scan centrally over a VPN from headquarters, you may miss some vulnerabilities due to timeouts. Because of the slowness of the VPN, which is typically 1/10 the speed of a normal network connection, you may indeed miss some of the vulnerabilities that exist out there, either in the store environment or that can be reached through the VPN, and then it can use that VPN to attack the stores. It's much better to scan locally for vulnerabilities if you can do that, either with an appliance or software for scanning actually at the store itself, to avoid that scenario. As far as encryption, this one's pretty simple. It starts to encrypt, and really, if it encrypts in place, not changing the names of files, really only file integrity monitoring or a tool similar to that can be used to determine which files are encrypted. So file integrity monitoring can pay dividends there. And of course, as always, you want to have shared file server access controls in place, so only those who need to access the files have access, and not everyone in your domain. So that will help prevent the spread. The demand stage are really more than a defense. It's more of a reactionary remediation that you're going to need to take if you actually get to that stage and you've got ransomware messages popping up on systems. We're going to talk about some of the tools and the decryption. First of all, there's a link here that's very important. You want to hang on to this one. Under windowsclub.com, there's about 40+ links right now for decryption tools for various different ransomware, identifiers for that, and so forth, and related utilities. You're going to want to keep that handy in case you do get attacked, because it could be your how-to guide in a lot of ways. It does require strong system skills. You can't, you do need to require some IT skills to use some of the things that are provided on this page. But the other thing I would like to say is that you need to be sure that you're using links from trusted sources, probably commercial software companies over just independent people. Not that they don't know, it's just that there has been incidences of where ransomware attackers have populated things like this with further attacks. So use this diligently and carefully as far as who you're getting the information from. The WannaCry decryptor tool is there. If you need to decrypt a WannaCry attack, that's there, and there's the link for that. As far as backup and sharing, there are some considerations when you do backups, and of course that is your only form of restoring in some cases, that you keep an eye on how you're backing up. If you're backing up onto USB attached backup drives to systems, those will get corrupted or encrypted at the same time the ransomware attacks. Windows file share contents with continual write access will also get encrypted. So if you're using a file share to back up onto, that could get encrypted too. And that's because ransomware, as we said before, searches out all the drives and folders that it can and its encryption targets. It's better to use a cloud-based backup solution where there's a proprietary agent that does not ever allow the user of that system to gain access directly to the files that it has up in the cloud. And that also will stop ransomware from reaching those files. So we've talked about this stages of a ransomware attack, when the damage occurs, and what defenses should be put in place to defend against it at each stage. And hopefully these defenses will help protect your systems from being attacked in the first place. But if your systems are attacked, let's talk a little bit about the decision to pay or not to pay. First of all, what is that? That's are we gonna break down and pay it? What are all the deciding factors? How do we know whether to pay or not to pay ransom? Well, sometimes the decision's pretty easy whether to pay or not to pay. It's just a simple yes or no. But other times it does really require some more consideration. So you want to know, you want to be able to tell if ransomware is demanding the ransom and what ransomware it is. Okay, how it's, you know, you can tell if you really have had encryption or not. Is it just scareware, or has it really encrypted data? Do you see evidence of that? What confidential data could be exposed? If you've seen it encrypt files in a certain folder, chances are they've also been able to review the data in that folder. So if it's Shade or if it's one of the others that actually allows remote access tools, they may have your confidential data. So keep that in mind. Is there a decryption tool available from a trusted company or service that you're willing to run on that system? Do you have reliable backups, meaning backups that you've tested and you know you could restore the file? So, you know, we don't have to worry they might have encrypted it, but we can get it back. How much the demand is, whether you can afford it. Can you get required cryptocurrency fast enough, and can you live with subsidizing those attackers? Those are some of the decisions you're going to keep in mind on whether to pay or not. If you do need to pay, you're probably going to need Bitcoin, currently at about $2,600 per Bitcoin. And you also might have other alternatives. Sometimes the ransomware demand screen will show the ability to use MoneyPack, which you can run down the street to your local CVS or Walmart, Walgreens, and get a MoneyPack and pay them that way, which avoids the whole, you know, Bitcoin complexity. So if you have to pay the ransom in Bitcoin and you'd like to do it, which is likely going to be the currency they want, you'll need to get a Bitcoin wallet. I've listed some here. That I don't endorse any of these, but there they are if you want to essentially obtain a wallet to pay. You know, you'll have to also interface that wallet with an exchange, a Bitcoin exchange, and I'll give you a list of those or provide you a slide with those. But it does sometimes take too long to get set up with a Bitcoin wallet and an exchange to get the Bitcoin. So you might want to, if you feel like there's a chance you're going to need it, you got some users, maybe you're not too sure about their security skills, you might want to go ahead and get a wallet and get some Bitcoin of, say, $600 or $1,000 to put in there. And I'll say right now, I am not endorsing Bitcoin. I have no investments in Bitcoin or anything like that. But you may want to get some handy in case you get something like Jigsaw and you're going to elect to pay that in Bitcoin. With Bitcoin going up, heck, you might even make money too. You never know. So here's the list of, you know, a list of merchants, services, essentially exchanges that you'll need to connect your wallet to. Any of these will work. You can check with your wallet provider, which are free, by the way, and see which exchanges they actually work with the best. So here's what's coming next. Here's what we have to worry about next: mobile ransomware. But you know, before we do that, let's take a few seconds at this point to test our newfound knowledge by using some of the terms we've learned so far correctly in sentences. That always helps, you know, as a review. So, you know, since we're talking about mobile ransomware, and since that's really what's coming next, we'll use them in sentences about mobility. And there's a couple examples for you there. If those don't get it for you, then we'll actually really talk about mobile ransomware. So here's some you know, graphs showing mobile ransomware and which ones are leading out there right now. There's two, Fusab and Small. They actually own 93% of the mobile market on the Android and the iOS platforms. I'm sorry, the Android platform. And that's been discovered and documented by Kaspersky Labs as a source. And so those are the ones you'll expect to see, Fusab or Small. They look like this. Fusab basically typically is downloaded as an application off a pornographic site. Small, it's unknown, but it looks a little bit like this. So if you're doing those bad things out there, you may end up with something like this. It does lock your entire Android phone until you you know, take care of the ransom. Also in China, just spotted earlier this month, is one that looks like this, which may spread in an English version shortly. It's known to encrypt files that are less than 10K in size because it's an Android device and not a full-blown, you know, full-size computer. It uses AES 256. It doesn't encrypt files that start with .dot or files in the system folders of the Android device. One of the problems with Android ransomware is not just the fact that it locks up the user's device, but that it can be used then to attack your networking devices on your network when the user brings it into the office and hooks up on Wi-Fi. So it will make attempts to guess router passwords. If it does so, it'll change DNS settings and entries on that router, and effectively now redirect your users with full desktops and laptops to exploit sites when in fact they wanted to go to their normal working web servers in the cloud. Bad thing. iOS is not immune. Prior to iOS 10.3, there was a way the Safari browser worked. It's included with iOS. There was a hijacking ransomware that leveraged JavaScript. It popped up continuously, and you couldn't essentially use your Safari browser anymore until you met demands. And it basically was changed in 10.3 of iOS so that it pops up in a separate page, so you're not totally locked out of your browser. So to stop mobile ransomware, you really have to treat your phones like all the other systems on your network. You've got to apply the OS updates as they become available, and that includes applications. If you're not going to update them, then delete them, because that's the source of a lot of attacks, especially applications that are not downloaded from the Google Play or the Apple Store. Those are your safest bet. They're not totally immune from ransomware, but they're definitely a better shot at protecting yourself against it. And then, of course, the best solution is to use Microsoft mobile devices. Don't use Android or iOS anymore. Okay, just kidding again. Nobody uses Microsoft mobile devices anymore. Just do the other things in the bullets. So finally, reporting the ransomware to authorities is important because, the FBI is effectively providing a great collection of information to researchers and others. You can do this easily at www.ic3.gov, where you'll need to report the items that are shown here on the slide. But please do that. It's very helpful in fighting off ransomware, and it provides a lot of good data to all of us who are in the business of fighting it. And lastly, I wanted to say that total security and adequate security is founded on the sharing of ideas and awareness of threats. So we all better pitch in. This is a heck of an attack set that we're seeing from these ransomware guys, and we really are going to have to pitch in to fight this off. If you want to discuss or share any issues or ideas you have discovered, please share those on Conexxus. The links are here at the end of this presentation, or if you prefer, private email me. Here's my email address. Okay, so we're really kind of over right now. Ali, would you want to do Q&A at this point, or do you have a set of questions that I'll just need to answer independently? How would you like to proceed?
If anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and email you or send an email to myself or info@conexxus.org, just for the sake of time. But thank you, George. You gave us a lot of great information. I don't think anybody really minded it running over with everything we just learned.
That's great.
And with that, I think that's going to conclude the webinar. We'd like to thank everybody for attending, and you can find Conexxus on our website, email, follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. The next webinar will be on July 27th on third-party risk management, how to identify and manage data security risks from your vendors. And just a reminder, the slide deck will be provided if you complete the short survey that will be sent to you after the webinar, so you can get all this great information and get to go check out all the links that George has found for us. And thank you, George.
You're certainly welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to present.
Thank you all for attending.